Well, thank you for joining us. My name is Kent Hovind from Pensacola, Florida, and this is Dr. Larry Tyler from Washington, Missouri. And he's a chiropractor.
Yes.
How long have you been in chiropractic?
I've been a chiropractor for 15 years now.
15 years.
15 years.
I have been to thousands of chiropractors, and you fixed my back, brother. It was awesome. So I thought I'd put together a video on the Bible and health. And you call your seminar, when you speak on this topic, Polar Bears, Bumblebees, and Healthcare. Why is that?
Well, the story of the polar bears comes about trying to open up people's minds.
Okay.
We have been brainwashed. We've been brainwashed in lots of areas of our lives, and healthcare is not an exception to that rule. The polar bear story goes like this. The city of Denver was given a gift back in the early 80s. It was a polar bear cub, and it was shipped to them in a transport cage. And this polar bear cub had the room to take about 3.5 shuffle steps in one direction, and it kind of turned around and took 3.5 shuffle steps back the other way. And that was all the room that this polar bear cub had. Well, the people who know polar bears went to the city of Denver and said, hey, you better get this polar bear out of this cage real soon, otherwise it's going to suffer damage that's going to last a lifetime. Well, in the infinite wisdom of bureaucracy, it took about 8 years for them to complete the building of the Denver Zoo. And the big day came around, they had their polar bear exhibit all ready to go, and meanwhile this polar bear had spent the last 8 years taking 3.5 shuffle steps and then 3.5 shuffle steps back, because that's all the room it had now. Well, the day came around, they opened up the new exhibit, and they opened up the door, and what happened? The polar bear took 3.5 steps, stopped, and then took 3.5 shuffle steps back. And to this day, that bear is still at the Denver Zoo, and all it does is take 3.5 shuffle steps forward and 3.5 shuffle steps back. It has been so programmed that its entire universe at this point is based on the polar bear cage.
Okay.
Everywhere it looks, it sees the polar bear cage.
All right.
Now, they've been able to distract the polar bear every now and then. If they give it a big old salmon, okay, or give it a pine tree to play with, well, it can get distracted and it will kind of wander out of its zone a little bit. But the very next day, it's back to the same old way because that's the way it's always done things. That's been its entire existence. Well, for the last 150 years now, our entire healthcare system has been based on allopathic principles. Okay, feel bad, take a pill. Feel real bad, take another pill. And if it gets real bad, then we'll just cut it out. Right. And that's the whole mindset of healthcare in the United States these days. So I tell people the polar bear story in order to challenge them to open up their mind. If all you're going to go through life is looking at the polar bear cage, okay, then you're never going to change any of the patterns and any of the things that's happening. Right. And the state of health right now in the United States is not exactly anything to be proud of. Correct. I mean, we spend a whole lot of money on healthcare, but we're ranked 20th or 21st in the list of industrialized nations as far as the healthcare of our population is concerned. We have more diseases now than we've ever had. Cancer and autoimmune diseases are running through the roof. Okay, we are living a little bit older, but that's not because we're healthier. We're living a little bit older because we've gotten pretty good at repairing trauma, and that's caused a statistical shift. Okay, so I start off with polar bears, just trying to challenge people to open up their minds and not fall into the polar bear cage. Another way I've analogized that is, you know, if you get in a boat in St. Louis and you travel downstream, well, you end up in New Orleans. And if you get back up in the boat in St. Louis and go downstream, you end up in New Orleans. You know, and every time you get in a boat in St. Louis and go downstream, you're going to end up in New Orleans. Right. And that's okay if you want to go to New Orleans. But if you want to end up someplace different, say Chicago, okay, well then you better do something other than get in a boat underneath the arch and travel downstream. And that's what's happening. You know, every 20 years or so, the medical community comes out with a new magic bullet. You know, here, take this pill, it's going to cause our problem or solve our problems. And then another 20 years later, they'll come back and say, well, we've got a new drug to solve that problem. And we've got a new drug to solve that problem. And we've gone through several generations of antibiotics and pain relievers and all these other drug therapies, and we keep ending up in the same place, unhealthy and sick. Right. Dying of chronic diseases that we really shouldn't be dealing with at this point.
Well, and they keep making money along the way.
Oh, and they keep making money along the way, absolutely. Matter of fact, this year in 1998, the pharmaceutical companies were kind of bragging that they made more money in the first 6 months of this year, a percentage increase, than they've ever had in the history of the pharmaceutical industries.
I read a great book on how Rockefeller used to sell oil, regular crude oil, as you know, snake oil, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
To heal everything, cure all. And that's how he got rich.
Oh, yeah.
Selling bottles of this stuff, and he really has got a profound influence on the pharmaceuticals.
Yeah. Yeah. The pharmaceutical industry is, well, I mean, first off, it's being regulated by the FDA, which is made up of former pharmaceutical executives. Sure. Okay, so you know, you've got the proverbial fox watching the hen house, and what happens is you know, they come up with a new drug. They've just spent millions of dollars, maybe billions of dollars developing this new chemical compound, okay, and it may be beneficial for altering some chemical states, change the way the body's working, okay, but that doesn't make it beneficial to the whole system.
Right.
You know, a lot of times we are dying from our cures as opposed to dying from our diseases.
Oh, that's the truth.
And the pharmaceutical industry is right in the middle of that. That's just where their head is.
Well, as a creationist, of course, I'm interested in how God fits into all this. The Bible says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth.
Yes.
So if God created it, He must have a plan, must have an order to it. And I teach in my seminars that God told Adam and Eve what to eat and what not to eat. And you and I have been talking earlier about how that the whole world is made up of simply a few basic atoms.
The universe as we know it is made up of 96 elements.
Right.
And those are all the pieces that He used to make everything.
Similar to 26 letters of the alphabet make all the books ever written in English.
Yes.
And the same basic elements make up all the structures of the universe. And the human body, you said, has basically a pretty high percentage of just a few of these elements.
Right. And basically, 96% of the human body is made up of 4 different elements.
Okay.
Okay. The other 4% is made up of 22 others.
Okay.
Okay. So the basic design and building of our system is made up of 26 elements. Now we use a few more in its everyday maintenance and running of it.
Right.
Okay, the fuel, if you will.
Sure.
Okay, but the building blocks is basically consisting of 26 elements.
See, the Bible says God made man of the dust of the ground.
Yes, and breathed life into him.
And breathed life into him. So we're just made out of the dust of the ground. Now the systems of the body, there's numerous different systems. And when I taught biology and anatomy, I compared it to a car. You can study a car system by system. Study the brake system. Study the propulsion system. Study whatever. And then you learn how to integrate the systems.
Right.
And that's probably the simplest way to learn the human body, too, is study a few systems and then see how they tie together.
Exactly.
Tell us of your specialty, or what do you like studying about that?
Well, my specialty is that of a chiropractor. The chiropractic profession is based on the knowledge that the central nervous system is responsible for controlling and coordinating all the functions and all the structures of the human body.
Right.
Everything that takes place in the human body is controlled or coordinated by the nervous system. The function of the spinal column and the skull is to protect that nervous system. Okay, when the spinal column and the skull become distorted, okay, minor distortions, it interferes with the function of the neurological system. And as soon as you start interfering with the function of the neurological system, then whatever is being controlled or coordinated by that nervous system cannot properly function.
So if you have 4 brake lines going to each wheel of your car, one of them is pinched. That wheel doesn't stop.
That wheel no longer responds to you pushing on that brake pedal the way
Correct.
it's supposed to.
And if part of your nervous system is pinched, for lack of a better word, that whatever it controls cannot respond.
Exactly. I've analogized the nervous system like a command center. If you had a general of an army, okay, and he was sitting in the central location, and he had all these outposts spread throughout his region, and he had messengers that brought messages back and forth from the command center to those outposts. Okay, and if there was an invading army attacking one of the outposts, well, then that outpost would send a message to the commander, and the commander would now direct his reinforcements over to that side of the attack.
Right.
Okay, and depending on where the information came from, the general would know where to send his extra troops. Okay, well, if that communication line got broken, okay, that outpost would now become vulnerable to attacks.
Sure.
It would start breaking down. Okay, the army that was attacking him would have a better ability to overcome it. Okay, it would not be able to get its supplies to maintain itself. It would not be able to get the reinforcements it needs to attack the invading army. Okay, well, that's the way our nervous system works with all of our bodily parts. Most of the infectious agents that we deal with in our world are referred to as opportunistic organisms.
Sure.
They only affect the weak host, and they only affect the weakest part of the weak host. Okay, and that directly implies response of the system. If you get an invading organism, say a bacteria or a virus, okay, and it's breathed in through our nose, and our sensory membranes and sensory nerve endings up into the nasal cavity and things like that sends a message to the brain saying we've got an invading organism in here. And then the brain can respond appropriately to it. It can increase the secretion of the mucous membranes. Okay, it can increase circulation so that there's more blood flow to it.
Right.
It can increase the activity of things such as the spleen and the medullary cavities and the lymph system in order to fight the infection more effectively. But if that message is never received by the brain, then all those functions don't take place. And that makes an infection that allows an opportunistic organism to get in there and take hold, okay, and start causing signs of ill health and dysfunction.
So what most people do is they worry about attacking that organism instead of building up the immune system.
Exactly. It's treating the symptom.
Treating the symptom.
It's treating the symptom. A good analogy I like to use is if you're driving down the road and the red light comes on the dash. You know, they're called idiot lights for a reason.
Right.
Okay, because if you're only waiting for the red light to come on and you're not paying any attention to any of the early warning signs, okay, then you're not taking care of the car the way you're supposed
Correct.
to.
Right.
Okay. Well, if you're driving down the road and a little red light comes on that says you're low on oil, you pull off to the side of the road, and at that point you have two options. You can get in the car and check the oil, and if it's low, you certainly can add a little bit of oil to the car, and that fixes the problem. And you can drive down the road and not have another care. Or you can get to the side of the road and you can find the plug that goes to the little red light.
Unplug the light.
And you unplug the light. If you unplug the light, once again, you've gotten rid of your symptom. The red light is gone. But that doesn't mean the car is working any better. And so you drive on down the road, and then next thing you know, you're throwing a rod, and now you have a major problem that started from a simple little problem. And that's what we're dealing with so much of our healthcare problems today.
Right.
From, you know, our children get exposed to their first antibiotic before they're 1 hour old. We wash infants' eyes out now with antibiotics. We used to use silver nitrate. And now we do that just in case the mother has some sort of venereal disease.
Right.
But instead, of course, checking the mothers to make sure, you know, to see whether or not they fall into that category, they're just going to wash out all the infant's eyes.
Yeah.
Another good use of resource.
Sure.
Okay, I mean, gee, a $10 dose of antibiotics, and there's 3 million babies born every year. Okay,
that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money for the pharmaceutical industries. And so they get their first dose of antibiotics when they're less than an hour old, and then before they're a day old, they get their first shot of vaccinations. Okay, in which they're getting injected with a foreign substance, a virus, the hepatitis virus, and at the same time they're also getting exposed to things such as formaldehyde and mercury and aluminum, which are known toxins to the human body. Formaldehyde's a known carcinogen. Nobody would even consider feeding a teaspoon of formaldehyde to their little baby. Okay, but yet we're injecting it directly into their bloodstream when they're less than a day old. Aluminum and mercury are known toxins to the nervous system. Okay, they've been linked to things such as autism, attention deficit disorders, Alzheimer's. Okay, all sorts of mental handicaps are associated with the accumulation of aluminum and mercury in the nervous tissue.
Can that come from cooking in aluminum pans?
Well, that was one of our first concerns.
Sure.
Okay, was whether or not when we first identified the aluminum concentration in Alzheimer's patients. I mean, we started down this pathway. We checked our antiperspirants. Okay, antiperspirants contain aluminum chlorhydrate. But we did some studies on that, and that didn't seem to be a major factor. And then we started looking at our soda cans and our cooking utensils. Okay, and yes, when you heat up aluminum, a little bit of those aluminum molecules are pulled off of that
Right.
compound, and it does get absorbed into the food. Excuse me. And that, you know, that can provide a little bit of aluminum into the system, but that didn't even seem to be the major culprit. At which point they thought, well, then this aluminum thing is just a coincidence. Well, they forgot to check one other area, and that was our vaccinations.
Putting it straight into the blood.
Putting it straight into the blood. When we take in a foreign substance, be it a bacteria or a toxic mineral or something like that, and we bring it in through normal means, the mucous membranes, the digestive tract, those areas are lined with lymphatic tissues, okay, that are designed to deal with those substances. Okay, but when we inject it directly into the bloodstream, we short circuit all those things,
Right.
and suddenly you have, you know, toxic metals circulating through the bloodstream.
Well, see, you can drink snake venom, many types of snake, and it won't hurt you.
Right.
Your system can digest it, but you put it into the blood, it'll kill you.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's a great analogy to realize that people, here we are giving this to the kids when they're born.
14 times between the ages of 0 and 2 years old, we inject our children. Actually, it's recently been updated to 15 recommended shots. Okay, and every one of them contains aluminum and mercury. And all of our so-called new safe vaccines contain formaldehyde.
Okay, now, if I was the devil, to get a big picture of the whole thing, the devil hates humanity.
Yes.
He wants to kill everybody for several reasons. We're made in the image of God, and he hates us because of that, because he wanted to be God. Isaiah 14 talks about that. And also, the prophecy in Genesis chapter 3 was that the seed of the woman would bruise the head of the serpent. So Satan knows that one of these human beings is going to come along and destroy him. So his rationale is, well, I'll just kill them all.
Right.
That's what he tried with Herod, killing all the babies at the time of Christmas.
Exactly.
Okay, just kill them all. And so he really wants to destroy humanity. And I think there's a multi-pronged attack to destroy humanity physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially. And if you look at the Scriptures carefully, the Bible gives us loads of clues to warn us about these traps that are out there. And the physical realm is one that so many Christians, their Bible, they pray, they go to church, they win souls, but they don't take care of their health.
Yeah. They're missing an important aspect, of our existence.
My Sunday school teacher used to say, your spirit has to live in your body.
Right.
So you
better take care of your body.
Now you can go overboard on that. Some people, do nothing but the body.
Right. Right.
Bodybuilders, which is not necessarily bad, but there's more to life.
Right. We are charged to keep the body balanced the way God intended it. Okay. The scientific community, healthcare providers are taught there are three aspects to our life. That is the chemical, the physical, and the mental aspect. As a Christian, I also know that there is a spiritual aspect of our lives. Okay. And certainly you have to be spiritually healthy for anything else really to matter. And that's the relationship with Lord Jesus.
Right.
From a physical, chemical, and mental aspect, we are responsible for taking care of the temple. And that's the aspect that we are charged to take care of here on this earth. We have to keep the body balanced the way God intended it to do. We are supposed to have a healthy mental outlook. Okay? The Bible says that the tongue is a very powerful organ.
Right.
Okay? And we now know through research that the speech centers of our brain tend to have an overriding effect on the rest of the nervous system. Okay, so if you wake up every morning and say, man, I feel miserable, I don't have any energy, and I think I'm getting sick, well, guess what's going to happen? Over a period of time of waking up every morning and saying, I feel miserable, I'm tired, I'm getting sick, well, then guess what's going to happen? You're going to start feeling miserable, getting tired, and feeling sick.
Right.
Okay, they've classified this in the scientific world as the psychoneuroendoimmunology. Okay, the psychoneuroendoimmunology. Okay, and basically we know that your mental outlook, your mental activity will influence the way your neurological, endocrinological, and immunological systems work. A good example of that is you can take two individuals, one that just loves roller coasters. He'd ride a roller coaster all day long. There's not much more happy in life. Okay, and then the other spectrum is that guy who just dreads roller coaster. Won't get on it for anything.
Right.
Well, if you took those two individuals and you put them in a car and you drove them to a Six Flags parking lot, and before you took the trip, you measured their blood, and you found out what their blood levels were, their gases, their endorphin levels, those sorts of things, you'd get a baseline reading. You took them to the Six Flags parking lot, and you got out of the car and you pointed at the roller coaster and you said, "You're going to ride that roller coaster," and then checked those two people's blood. You'd find changes in their blood from the baseline you took before you took the car ride.
The one that's excited?
The ones that excited, boy, he'd have an increased oxygen level in his blood. He'd have an increased endorphin level. Boy, he'd just be charged up and ready to go. And meanwhile, the gentleman who is dreading the ride, okay, you'd find an increase in all the stress responses, an increase in cortisol, an increase of white blood cell production. Okay, so there would be a real measurable physical difference from an attitude.
Well, the Bible says, a merry heart doeth good like a medicine.
Right.
Sometimes you can't affect your surroundings always, but you can affect how you respond to those surroundings.
I'm not talking about speaking yourself well necessarily.
Right.
Okay, but the attitude of first of all, thankfulness. One, that we've got a breath. You wake up in the morning and you've got a breath. You should be thankful.
Right.
That is a gift of God.
Sure.
Because it's not going to happen. It's not going to. He is sustaining His entire universe. If it is alive, He is sustaining its life. And if it is in a non-living state, He is the one that is sustaining that non-living state. So we have to keep the proper mental attitude. Another area of our body that we have to keep balanced, and that's the chemical aspect of our life. Okay, we are made up of atoms and molecules. Atoms and molecules are the building blocks, the Legos or the tinker toys, depending on the generation you come from. Okay, that God used to make His creation. Okay, and basically He used the same building blocks to make everything.
Right.
He just arranged them in a little bit different order, okay, and gave them a little bit different functions. But the molecules themselves, they have no awareness. I've said that molecules are stupid.
Right.
They never contemplate the results or the consequences of their actions. When you take in a substance, I don't care if it's a naturally occurring or a synthetically produced substance, when you take it in, that molecule and atom is simply looking for a place to react and to bond. It doesn't care if it's the right place, the wrong place, beneficial or detrimental to the organism. Okay, molecules have to be controlled and coordinated.
Right.
Okay, and that's what God does for us, okay, through His power in a living state. Okay, molecules in non-living states, okay, are directed by the laws of thermodynamics, the laws that govern the universe. I know you talk a lot about it.
It's all falling apart.
Right, it's all falling apart. It's moving to randomness and chaos. Okay, it takes intelligence. Okay, it takes a controlling and coordinating power in order to maintain those molecules and atoms in an organized fashion. Mm-hmm. When you remove that source of organization or power, then everything falls down. One way I like to illustrate that is that one moment we are alive, and the next moment we're dead. But we have the very same molecules.
Right.
As a matter of fact, our molecules keep on doing. They keep on doing what they are known to do.
Only now it's
Only
destructive.
now it's destructive. It's chaos and it's random. And that's why the tissues break down and we decay. Okay, so, life is not about the molecules. And that's where the bumblebee part of my lecture comes in.
Oh, okay, sure.
Okay, I'll tell you about the bumblebee.
Got the polar bear.
Okay, we got the polar bear. You see, there are different types of science logics. Okay, two dominant ones is first off mechanism. Okay, that is what most of today's science is based on. And mechanism, in a nutshell, says that if you take the biggest thing and you break it down into the little bittiest pieces, well, then that will explain how the big thing works.
That's fatally flawed.
Well, yeah, it is flawed. Okay. But, we have spent a lot of time looking for the secret to our life and to our existence in the molecules.
Sure.
Okay. But molecules have no intelligence. Okay. You cannot find the secret to life or the secret to the universe in the lowly atom.
Well, I don't want to interrupt your train of thought,
That's
but
okay.
an example. The airplane is made up of thousands of parts which cannot fly.
With thousands of parts which cannot fly.
You cannot study the parts and figure out how the airplane flies.
Exactly. And you cannot study the parts, the atoms and the molecules of the human body and understand life.
Right, very good, okay.
Okay. Now there is another type of logic. It's called vitalism. Okay, and vitalistic logic accepts the presence of a universal intelligence or an innate intelligence or a life force or an energy source. Now, once again, that's the atheistic, that's the world's definition. I know it's
Right.
God, you know it's God.
Right.
Okay, but they accept the presence of a universal intelligence or an innate intelligence that is controlling and directing the activities of the atoms and the molecules.
Right.
Okay. Well, mechanistic science, to show the flaws of mechanistic science has proven that bumblebees can't fly.
Wings aren't big enough.
Wings aren't
body's
big
too
enough
heavy.
and body's too heavy. Okay.
Right.
Problem is they forgot to tell the bumblebee.
So they fly just fine.
They fly. I've run from them. They fly very good.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, faster than I can run.
Right.
Okay, so bumblebees disprove, if you will, mechanistic science as an explanation for life.
Sure.
Okay, there has to be a controlling force, a universal force, a life force, a God. Okay.
Well, I get atheists all the time that tell me, well, yeah, because I'll say the universe, everything's winding down,
Mhm.
falling apart, second law of thermodynamics.
Right.
And they'll say, well, that's only in a closed system. If you add energy, it reverses entropy. And they say, see, the sun shines on the earth, that supplies energy, so that's how the earth is able to overcome the second law of thermodynamics. What they're not realizing is the sunlight energy is destructive unless there's something to organize it, like plants.
Plants, exactly.
Otherwise, it's destructive on everything else.
Right. There is, those radiations, those ion particles, that bombard us. That's like shooting marbles into a marble game.
Right.
Okay. I mean, you throw something in there, it's going to scatter what's
Right,
in there,
right.
not control and coordinate and organize what's in
Mhm.
there. I use the analogy. I have Legos that I take around for talks that
Right.
could explain the molecules and the atoms and how they interact. And I was joking with my wife that I had to tape the lid down, okay, because if the lid popped open
On your Lego container.
on the Lego container, if the lid popped open on my drive down here, those Legos would scatter.
They wouldn't organize.
They wouldn't organize themselves into anything. They just randomly fall through the car.
Well, that's a pretty good analogy because the Lego is designed to snap into another Lego.
Just like the
So-
atoms are designed to fit together.
Right.
Okay.
But random shaking of these Legos is not going to produce the desired result.
No, not at all. Randomness is not an efficient means to build anything.
Every time I've done lots of handyman work, remodeling, construction type stuff, and I marvel how anybody can believe in evolution because nothing gets better by itself.
One of the biggest stumbling blocks for evolution and mechanistic science is the process of morphogenesis. And so that's a stumbling block that you can always stump them.
Right.
You know, how can you explain morphogenesis? Okay, morphogenesis is the construction of life in a living organism out of nothing. Okay, and the best analogy I can find for it is a vacant lot. Imagine if you could a vacant lot, okay, and then suddenly nobody put them there, just kind of magically pieces of a house. You know, the lumber, the nails, the shingles, the plumbing, the wiring, all the pieces appeared on the lot. Mm-hmm. Okay, in a big old heap of pow. Okay, first off, that would take. I mean, that's a miracle in itself. I can't even imagine the number of billions of years. Okay, that would be necessary for all these pieces to fall into place.
Sure.
Especially with nobody doing it.
Right.
You know, and on the big scale, it's a lot like if you're flying in an airplane, okay, over the United States, and you had a 2x4 in your hand, and you threw it out the window, and it landed on that lot. Okay, I mean, that's just the randomness and the haphazard nature at which all these things had to get in the same place in the first time. Okay, but anyway, so miraculously, all the pieces at least show up in the right place.
Okay.
Okay. You know, that's a stretch in and of itself.
Sure.
But then, all the pieces start to properly line themselves up. And 2x4A lines up with 2x4B.
And the nails.
And the nails come along and drive themselves in.
Right.
And everything that was in between A and B got out of the way.
Sure.
Okay, and the right nail and the right length found the right spot and held them together.
Of course, there's zero chance of that.
It's an absolute zero chance.
Yeah.
And then one board after another following that process, and then the screws and the wiring and the plumbing and all those things that go into building a house just accidentally, on their own, lining themselves up and building a house. Okay, that's what morphogenesis is. Okay, and I mean, you know, once again, I don't know how many billions of years.
It would never happen.
But it just couldn't happen.
But see, in their mind, they somehow think, well, if you give it enough time, it might happen. So wait a minute, time's not going to help.
No, you know, if you leave that pile of building material on that vacant lot for an extended period of time, it's not going to build a house.
They'll rot.
It's going to rot. It's going to turn back into the dirt that it came from.
Oh, because here we have the human body, and people are concerned about their health. How do I be healthy? Step one is you need to understand how God originally designed it.
Yeah.
And then find out, are we following His plan? Are we obeying His orders, doing what He said? If we're not, fix that.
Right.
Because I think an awful lot of people have diseases, a lot of Christians get diseases or various problems, and they pray and say, God, help me. God, please fix this. They don't realize God's already given us the commands in the Scriptures to tell us, and we're just simply not obeying.
Right. Yeah. Part of that is the schemes of Satan. He's blinded us to them.
Right.
You know, he's taken the knowledge we have of atoms and molecules, and he's perverted it into the principles and the theories of evolution.
Right.
You know, okay, I mean, the Lord revealed, all knowledge that we have is revealed to us from God. He is the source of all intelligence in the universe. What we know because He's given us and revealed it to us. Okay? So, you know, faith, I've come up with some definitions to kind of explain this. Faith is believing in things not yet proven, that you know to be true.
Okay.
Okay? Knowledge is information gained to support truth.
And knowledge base builds.
Knowledge builds. Science is a means by gathering knowledge. Okay? Logic is the interpretation of the knowledge to draw conclusions.
Okay.
Okay? Well, we're in the process of, the Lord's revealed lots of knowledge to us. Okay? We have scientific procedures that allow us to verify things as truth.
Sure.
Okay? But at the end of all that scientific knowledge, there's always an amount of faith, okay, that we have to tack on the end of it.
Right.
Okay? I can't, as you've said yourself, we can't scientifically prove, okay, creation, because we weren't there and we can't repeat it.
Right. Not observable.
It's not observable. It's the same thing for evolution.
Sure.
Okay, now we can look at lots of things now and draw conclusions from them. Okay, and you know, anybody that objectively weighs the evidence will conclude that evolution is a farce. It just can't happen. Okay, so that is, you know, the evolution thing is just Satan perverting our perception of the knowledge that's been revealed to us. Okay, we have to understand why God made us. We have to understand how He made us and how His creation works. Once we understand how His creation is working, okay, then we can do the things that are necessary to help maintain and take care of it. Okay, it's just like you wouldn't know how to take care of your car or your computer if you didn't read the manual.
Sure.
Okay, well, first off, we have a manual. It's called the Bible.
Right.
Okay, and there's lots of good solid scientific information in the Bible about our body
Right.
and how it works. We have to keep the body balanced. Okay, we talked about the mental aspect, the chemical aspect, and then there's a third portion, and that's the body. Okay, the physical existence.
Okay, take a few minutes and just, if you had to break the body into a few basic systems, explain what do we have, how does it work?
Okay. Well, the first system I'd have to start with is the nervous system.
Okay.
Okay. The nervous system, as I said, is responsible for controlling and coordinating all the structures and all the functions of the human body, either directly or indirectly.
Okay.
Okay?
We've all got a head.
We've all got a head. Weighs 13 to 15 pounds, the average adult head.
The brain weighs 3 to 5 pounds.
3 to 5 pounds.
Okay. That brain controls everything,
Yes.
but it has to get the message to the body,
Yes.
which comes through the spinal column.
It comes through the spinal cord. 97% of the nerves that control our body come out in between the bones of the spine. They exit the skull, okay, and travel down through the spinal cord, exiting through the spinal, in between the spinal vertebrae.
Okay.
Okay.
So God designed the body with the central head, just like Christ is the head of the church.
Christ is the head of the church.
And we're all supposed to be lined up with him.
That's right.
And sometimes we get out of line
Yes, we do.
and problems come in.
Yes. You know, anytime you lose the alignment, okay, when you're improperly tapped into the source, okay, spiritually with Christ
Right.
as the head of the church, also as the head of the body. Everything starts in the head. It comes down from the head, down through the body, out to the parts, causing the parts to grow according to the way Christ would have them grow. Okay, we know embryologically in the developing baby, okay, if we sever a nerve, whatever that nerve was controlling will not develop,
So you could cut the nerve to the lung?
and the lungs would never form.
Okay.
Okay, everybody knows in an adult that if you sustain a spinal trauma and you sever the spinal cord in the lower back, okay, you lose function of the legs.
Right.
And over time, the legs atrophy.
Sure.
Okay, because they have no neurological source directing their activity. Okay, our body makes about 50,000 new cells every 10 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, traveling in our brainstem are 100 million nerve impulses per second. Okay, information coming from the body up to the brain interpreting that information, and then sending a response back down. Okay.
Doesn't it also filter out, decide what's important?
Oh, absolutely. It's got an amazing filtering system. Okay, technically our nervous system is so fine-tuned that it is perceiving the fly that's bouncing off the window in the front of the building. Okay, it's picking up that sound wave, okay, bringing it in, but it's throwing it out as unnecessary information.
Right.
Okay, don't bother me with that right now.
I was not thinking about my right foot, but if I stopped and thought about it, I could tell you without looking what position it's in, you know, what pressure points it has.
Exactly. Constant communication. All the bodily parts, all the body parts, okay, are constantly feeding information up into the brain, telling the brain where the body's at.
Right.
Just a simple little process of coming up and scratching our nose.
Sure.
Okay, very complex neurological process.
Oh, get a robot to do that. It's incredible.
It's incredible. Okay. It starts with the conscious thing, I want to scratch my nose.
Right.
Okay, and I start moving my finger toward the nose. But as I'm moving my arm, okay, I've got nerve endings in the joints and the muscles of my arms firing information back into my brain, telling my brain how I'm doing. Okay, and it starts making corrections. Otherwise, I end up with the finger in the eye.
Which is coordination.
It's a coordination process. Okay, so you know we have different parts of the brain responsible for different parts of the job. Okay, the Bible says that every part has a job.
Sure.
Okay, and you can't make another part do a different part's job.
The eye can't do the job of the ear.
The eye can't do the job of the ear. Okay, so the nervous system by far is the primary system of importance in the human body. As a matter of fact, all the other systems we have are actually supportive to the nervous system. Our nervous system will shut down all the other parts and deprive them of anything they need in order to preserve itself.
Okay.
Okay, you see, it's our nervous system that gives us our identity. It is our nervous system that makes us consciously aware of our Creator. Okay, I mean, it is the primary purpose. Okay, the musculoskeletal system, which comprises 60% of our body, that's the muscles and the bones.
Right.
Okay, body mass is equivalent to about 60%. Okay, this primary function of the musculoskeletal system is first to provide protection to the nervous system. Okay, and then to provide mobility to the nervous system. You see, if you were just a nervous system and the rock was falling off the cliff,
You couldn't move.
you couldn't move to get out of the way. Okay, so the Lord gave us a musculoskeletal system to get us out of the way of the falling rock.
and everything else feeds information to this system.
Everything.
The eyes tell us what we're looking at, the ears what we're hearing,
Right.
feeling.
Yeah, exactly. Matter of fact, our brain, we have centers in our brain that directly tie our eyes to our neck. That's the only function of that piece of brain. And it's designed to get us out of the way of the baseball without thinking.
Sure.
Okay, that's occurring without conscious awareness. Now, as I'm happening in it, and his ball's already past me, I'm going, "Phew, that was close."
Right.
Okay, but that was a neurological reflex that took place simply from the eyes to this one brain center, okay, and then right down to the muscles of the neck to make us do that. We have a similar system for auditory response. Okay, we hear a loud bang, we're doing that. Okay, and
Or
that's
you step on a nail.
Or you step on a nail.
Your leg jerks.
Leg jerks. Okay, those occur at spinal cord levels, but at the same time, they're also sending information back up to the brain, okay, so that the brain is constantly aware where that foot is.
Mm-hmm.
I've used when I taught anatomy and physiology, I used the example of putting your hand on a hot plate.
Right.
Okay, you put your hand on a hot plate, and you're going to reflex right back off.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that part of the reflex is actually simply spinal cord. Okay, it goes into the spinal cord and right back out. Now, as it goes in, and as it's sending one message back out to pull the arm off, it's also sending a message up to the head saying, "I'm pulling my arm off. That was hot. Dummy, don't do it again."
Right.
Okay. And at the same time, it's sending a message to our cerebellum so that when I jerk that hand back, I don't end up slapping myself in the head, causing another injury. Okay, because that's just a reflex.
Okay.
Okay, so that neurological center, our brain, is controlling the memory of it's hot. Okay,
Right.
don't do that again, dummy.
Right.
Okay, and it's also saying, hey, on your way back, don't hit yourself in the head.
All like that.
All on nanoseconds.
Okay, so you got 206 bones in the human adult body.
206 bones in the human adult body and over 600 muscles in the human adult body. And they are all interconnected. Okay?
It's quite a wiring system.
Yeah, it's quite a wiring system. Okay? They are interconnected neurologically, okay, through the mechanisms I've just kind of talked about
Right.
briefly, but they're also interconnected biomechanically. Okay, we're a giant system of levers and pulleys. And anytime you move one set of muscles and joints, you're causing a series of biomechanical chain reactions that's influencing the muscular tension and the joint position throughout the rest of the system. Okay?
Okay.
That's the balancing and the antagonistic kind of responses, okay, to our actions. Okay?
And that system can be studied for a lifetime. But just to give people a general perspective here, you got 206 bones, 600 or so muscles,
Mm-hmm.
all connected. Now, those bones and muscles and nerves, etc., they need something to function. They need proper fuel. They need,
Absolutely.
which is what the whole nutrition and health
Yeah.
is all about. That's the other part of your sermon,
Right.
about polar bear, bumblebee, and
Healthcare.
Healthcare.
And healthcare.
how do you take care of this body? I got this complex body. I was born. I didn't know anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
Everything I know about it now, I've learned, and there's probably a lot more to learn.
Mm-hmm.
If you had to explain to somebody, what basic principles do you do as far as taking care of your body?
Well, keeping in mind that our objective is keeping the body balanced the way God intended it.
Right.
Okay. Man was not meant to mend his body. He was meant to take care of it. Health and healing comes from above.
Okay.
Okay. And more times than not, what we need to do is instead of intervening, trying to make his creation better, trying to correct his mistakes. Okay, our Creator didn't make mistakes.
Right.
It was a perfect creation, a perfect body. Okay, and what we have wrong with it now is a result of this world's perversion of that body, and not his creation mistakes.
Okay.
Most of our health care is geared towards making it better. Okay, well, you got this symptom, let's give you a drug that will make the opposite happen. Okay, if you've got a part that's not working right, let's just take the part out. Okay, we've got machines that will do that job for you, or heck, it's an extra part, you don't need it anyhow.
Right.
Okay.
Back to evolutionary philosophy.
Back to the evolutionary philosophies again. What we are supposed to do is keep the body balanced the way God intended it. We are supposed to take care of the musculoskeletal system. It is 60% of our body. Okay. Roger Sperry, a very intelligent individual, won a Nobel Prize back in the early 90s for his work in brain research. He is a neurophysiologist.
Okay.
Okay. Dr. Sperry said a couple of very interesting things. He said, first off, that 90% of our neurological mental activity, okay, is actually geared towards maintaining the musculoskeletal system. Okay, so 90% of the activity our brain goes through, okay, it's doing so in order to keep the bones, the muscles, and the joints in their proper interrelationship.
Automatically moving when you get uncomfortable.
Automatically moving when you get uncomfortable. Contracting muscles for respiratory purposes.
Heart beating.
Heart beating, all those sorts. Well, not so much heart beating. That falls into cardiovascular. Okay. But musculoskeletal maintenance. Okay, is what 90% of our activity is taking place as far as neurological is concerned. So if you Dr. Sperry also said that as a person's body distorts, it has less energy available for metabolism, healing, and thinking. Okay?
Because the first thing it's going to do is...
It's going to shift its concentration and its effort into maintaining that musculoskeletal system. If you've got a brand new automobile,
right,
with a brand new, perfect front end alignment, okay, you can drive down that road using a little finger.
Right.
Okay, because it doesn't take much energy, much effort to maintain.
Because it's working right.
Because it's working right.
Okay.
If you get a bad alignment, if you hit a few potholes over the years, okay, and those tires, the camber on those tires starts to change, and now you've got a bad alignment. Well, now you've got to use both hands on the steering wheel because you have to fight, okay, the distortion and the dysfunction, okay, that is taking place in those wheels. Okay?
So your driving energy is not being directed
towards going forward. It's being directed towards just keeping the car on the road.
So your body's energy can be directed to things that it shouldn't have to be directed toward.
Exactly. As our body becomes distorted, okay, once again, remembering that all of our systems are geared towards preservation of the nervous system.
Okay.
Okay. We are 60% musculoskeletal. Okay. Without our musculoskeletal system, our nervous system is vulnerable to all the forces of gravity, okay, and all the other things that can happen in this world. Okay, so as that body distorts, your brain shifts more and more neurological activity, okay, to the care and the maintenance and just trying to get that musculoskeletal system to do its job.
So are you saying if a person is tired a lot,
there's very probable structural distortions that's causing that body to work overtime.
So the energy is going the wrong place.
Energy is going the wrong place. It's an improper energy conversion.
Or if a person is just simply not alert mentally.
If the person is not mentally alert, less energy for metabolism, running the parts.
Right.
And less metabolism for healing, repairing the parts.
Right.
Okay. And less metabolism for thinking, i.e., contemplating the parts.
Right.
Okay. It talks about, science has said for years that we're only utilizing a very small percentage of our brain power.
I had students that used
very little.
small.
Yeah, I know. I taught a little college myself. It's amazing how much little brain power they can use.
Yes, sir.
But when they make statements like that, they're talking about our conscious brain power.
Okay.
They aren't talking about our brainstem levels, our basic biological functions. People don't damage brainstems and be normal.
Right.
Okay, when you damage those those more basic neurological centers, okay, you are going to have some sort of long-term ramifications in the system. We're not talking about the part you think with. We're talking about the part that you exist. That makes
you're not thinking about.
The part you're not thinking about.
So you got this spine coming out of the brain.
Yes.
Going through the nerve is going through the vertebrae.
The spinal cord comes out through the foramen magnum at the base of the skull, and then it goes through a series of 26 vertebrae. Okay, from the base of our skull all the way down to our tailbone.
Right.
And then coming out in between those vertebrae, these vertebrae sit on top of one another. I have just a few of them here.
Like a stack of donuts.
Like a stack of donuts stacked on top of one another. And when they do so, in between each bone, they form a little canal. It's called the intervertebral foramen. And coming out of one side, in between two bones, is approximately 300,000 nerves. So coming out in between, on one side would be 300,000 nerves, and on the other side would be another 300,000 nerves.
So this is your wiring harness.
This is your wiring. This is the communication cables.
Right.
Okay, between the body parts and the command center. Okay, it takes place from the base of the skull all the way down to your tailbone, about 31 pairs.
Okay, now a fiber optic cable can handle an enormous amount of information. I know they say if you cut a fiber optic cable and you're digging in your yard, they're going to charge you $10,000 a minute or something like that to come fix it.
Right, exactly.
Because there's a lot of stuff going through there. Is a nerve more complex than a fiber optic cable as far as is it carrying more information? Or any analogy there?
Well, yeah, certainly I believe it's more complex.
Sure.
Okay, without a doubt, because we are talking about dumb, mindless molecules carrying on very complex physiological activities.
Right.
Okay. Our nerves are very specialized. Okay, we have a nerve receptor. Okay, if you take a patch of skin You have literally a dozen different types of nerve endings.
Some for pressure, some for pain.
Some for light pressure, some for heavy pressure.
Some for temperature.
One for hot, one for cold.
Ah.
Different nerves.
One for pleasure.
One for pleasure. I mean, there are slow firing neurons. There are pain neurons called nociceptors. Like I say, there's a different nerve ending for a cold sensation and a different nerve ending for a hot sensation. Okay. There are sense organs that are detecting, hair stimulation.
Sure.
Okay. Light pressure, heavy pressure, and then you start getting into proprioceptive organs, sense organs that are in the individual muscle fibers, okay, telling the brain what muscle fibers are doing. Okay, then you have sensor organs that are in the joints, okay, in the tendons around the joints, telling the body where the body position is at in relative to that joint. So, we are a very complex network of nerves. Okay, as a matter of fact, if we were to dissolve all the other tissues, we'd still have a complete outline of the entire structure in the nervous tissue.
Right.
In the nervous tissue.
Okay, so somebody has a problem. They say, I've got a headache.
Mm-hmm.
They take an aspirin.
Yes.
Okay. What they're doing is unplugging the nerves.
They've pulled the plug.
They unplug the idiot light.
They unplug the idiot light. The aspirin has. You see, allopathic medicine, by definition, and most of medicine is allopathic in nature. And what allopathic medicine means, it's a drug that's designed to cause an opposite effect in the body.
The body's telling you, I got a headache.
And so this thing is just simply going to produce a chemical reaction that's going to mimic the opposite effect.
So then you think, I'm fine.
I'm fine. I don't have a headache.
Meanwhile, you didn't fix the problem.
Didn't fix the problem. Meanwhile, the aspirin wears off, and then you take another one.
Okay, suppose somebody does that for 40 years. That's the way they live. I'm sick, take a drug.
Right.
I'm sick, take a drug.
Right.
Which is what we've all been taught.
That's exactly what we've been taught.
Then, when they turn 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, they're still alive, they keep them alive, but their value or quality of life is
absolutely deteriorating. Okay.
You telling me about a guy that fell off his bike that you treated? He was how old?
84-year-old.
84-year-old?
84-year-old gentleman out in California, retired minister.
Okay.
And he was riding his bike on a Sunday afternoon in a closed shopping mall. They were closed on Sunday afternoon. And he was riding his bike in and around the pillars, okay, of the awning. And he hit a patch of gravel and wiped out. Okay, landed on his shoulder, and that's how he ended up in my office. But here is an 84-year-old gentleman who's in my office because he wiped out while riding his 10-speed. Okay, I've got 30-year-old patients who I can't get off the couch.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, the difference between an old car that's a classic and an old car that's a rusted piece of heap in a junkyard is how the owner took care of it along the way. I've used the analogy that our bodies are like a brand new Lexus. Okay, it's a fine automobile.
Okay.
Okay, there are two ways you can destroy that vehicle. You can take that vehicle and you can drive it off the cliff and blow it up.
Sure.
Okay, and you've gone from a fine automobile to garbage all at once. Very few of us go that way. Okay, but we can't go that way.
Right, some do.
You can catastrophic injuries that cause us to die.
Right.
Most of us destroy our Lexus not by driving it off the cliff, but by driving it to the Walmart. Okay, and we drive it to the Walmart, and the guy next to us gets out and opens his car door and puts a little dent in our fine Lexus. Okay, now we come out of the store and we see that little dent in our Lexus. Okay, we're going to come undone. Okay, first thing we're going to do is we're going to take that Lexus to the body shop. And we're going to say, fix it. I don't care what it costs. Fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because this guy opened his car door into my door, and he put a dent in it, and he chipped the paint. And if I don't fix it, I know that's going to cause me problems down the road. Now, it won't necessarily change the way the car drives, okay, but it will change the way it looks.
And expose an area and the rust will get in.
Right, exactly. You compromise the integrity of those molecules, okay, the environmental influences get in, and that metal starts to break down. We call it rust.
Sure.
Okay, you know what you call rust in the human body? Arthritis.
Okay.
Okay, same basic principle. It's exposing the molecules to an unnatural or an inappropriate stress, and they start deteriorating and break down.
Suppose somebody has arthritis.
Mm-hmm.
This probably indicates a lifetime of not doing what?
Absolutely. Of not taking care of, not removing the little dents.
Okay.
You see, you put a dent in the car, you don't notice the dent. It doesn't change the way the car drives right away. But if every week you drove to the Walmart and somebody else put another dent in the car, at the end of the year, you got 52 dents in that car.
Right.
Okay, and the first dent's starting to decay a little bit.
Yes.
Okay? You did that for a second year, now you have 104 dents in your car. Okay, now I don't know when, but sometime or another, all those dents are going to start influencing the way the car actually operates. Okay, it's going to start messing up its aerodynamics, the wind's going to start catching it, it's going to be harder to drive and manage the car. It's going to require more energy, okay, to keep the car going.
Okay.
Okay, well, we do that to our body. We get, traumas when we're young, we get traumas as we grow, and we get traumas as we get older, okay, but we never go in and take care of the traumas, or at least very rarely go in and take care of the traumas. We only take care of the traumas when it's a major crash. Okay, we don't take care of the little bitty dents. And it's the accumulation of little bitty dents that causes the car to deteriorate.
Which, the other day you said something about, they did a study on babies that were born, and during the birth process, like 80% of them?
Yeah, birth traumas are very common. Okay, first off, the way we give birth right now, okay, is
laying flat down on your back.
Laying on the back in the recumbent position. That process was started by Henry VIII.
Okay.
Okay, who had no concern about the health and well-being of the mother or the child.
Right.
Okay, he just wanted quick identification so he could decide what he was going to do.
Yeah.
Okay, but giving birth laying on your back is very traumatic, not only on mother but also on baby. A whole lot more force, a whole lot more pushing has to be done in order to get that baby out of the birth canal. Those things are slippery and slimy for a reason. Okay,
yeah.
If we were in a stand-up or squatted position, okay, gravity would help those babies come out without so much force.
And most women in other countries use a birthing stool of some kind
where they're birthing stool,
they're sitting.
Or they're sitting or squatting. Yeah. Absolutely. So birth traumas. Okay, you mentioned the European study. It was done by a researcher by the name of Gutmann and his associate Fryman. Okay, and basically they evaluated 2,000 infants between the ages of 0 and 5 days old, newborns to 5-day-old. And what they found is that 80% of those children were already showing signs of autonomic nervous system imbalance. Okay, now the autonomic nervous system is our sympathetic and our parasympathetic nerves. Okay, sympathetic nerves speed things up as a general rule. Fight, flight, get us out of the way of the falling right. Heart beats faster, lungs increase, blood flow to our muscles increase. Okay, sympathetic nerves also tend to shut down the digestive tract. Okay, you don't care about digesting your White Castle, okay, when you're getting out of the way of the falling rock.
Right.
Okay, the parasympathetics have basically the opposite effect. They increase blood flow to the digestive tract, and they diminish blood flow to the heart and to the lungs and slow down their activities. Okay, well, what Gutmann was able to demonstrate is that 80% of the infants between the ages of 0 and 5-day-old were already showing signs of an imbalance in those two systems. It would manifest itself in the forms of poor feeding patterns, ear infections, colic, general failure to thrive, okay, temperature regulation problems, okay, all those sorts of manifestations. Found that the majority of those autonomic nervous system imbalances was a result of a distortion at the base of the skull in the atlas vertebra, the top vertebra right underneath the neck.
So during birth,
during the birthing process, and I've seen dozens of training films on
delivering babies.
Delivering babies.
Yeah.
And in normal text, okay, on a training film, they showed one doctor taking a baby's head and rotating it nearly 180 degrees, okay, as he tried to help that baby go through restitutions on the way out of the canal. What happens during the birthing process is the head and the body have to go through a series of corkscrew procedures, okay, in order to turn around and come down and out.
Right.
Okay, and unfortunately, our OB doctors tend to get a little bit anxious, okay, wanting to speed the process up.
Well, it's money.
It's money.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can do 5 instead of 3 in a day.
Exactly. And so once that baby's head's out, okay, they don't want to wait for restitution. So what they tend to do is they tend to rotate that head real far to one side, okay, so that they can pop out the upper shoulder. Okay, and then they'll rotate the head real far the other way and pull up so they can pop out the bottom shoulder, and then the baby will come on out. Now, the baby has the ability to do that on its own if we just kind of back off and let it.
Right.
Okay, but no, we want to get it out as rapidly as we can. Okay, so like taking this young infant spine, okay, that has no experience in weight bearing whatsoever except for a little bit of in uterine, but it's floating in water there.
Sure.
Okay, and so you've got these young immature joints, okay, with this oversized head sitting on top of these undersized vertebra, okay, and you're taking it through extensive range of motion, okay, and it's getting stuck there, okay, and so they pull it out, and you know, this vertebra is twisted off to one side or the other, and it starts interfering not only with the nerve roots right there, but also interfering with the brainstem itself, Okay, a lot of sudden infant death syndrome, crib death, okay, is linked to upper cervical spine trauma. Okay, another major factor involved with that, and we'll talk about it in another lecture, is the vaccination issues which are associated with sudden infant death syndrome. But physically, the trauma of birth is very difficult on the baby. Okay, that's when it gets its first. If it's sitting in the uterus properly, then it's getting its first trauma at the birth process.
Okay.
Now, just for the record, if the mother spine is distorted, particularly the pelvis and the sacrum, if it's distorted during her pregnancy, that causes a torsioning and a distortion to take place in the uterus. Okay, and we end up with what's called in uterine constraint. Okay, where the baby is unable to turn around and move in an appropriate manner inside the uterus. Okay, and by the 7th month, the baby is supposed to be in a vertex position, head down.
Right.
Okay, if it cannot flip over because the uterus is torted, okay, well then it ends up crammed into the uterus with its head being pushed down if it's in a true breech position.
Sure.
Okay, so we end up with babies with no necks virtually. Okay,
right.
because everything's compressed down. If it's in a transverse line, okay, either a brow or facial presentation where it's laying crosswise in the uterus, well then we end up with a baby with an extensive hyperextension injury, okay, and that can cause problems. As a matter of fact, we know that cellular growth is 7 times greater in the in uterine fetus as opposed to the infant, okay,
after it's born.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so if you've got cellular activity taking place 7 times the normal rate of an infant, and it spends 3 months with its head compressed down like that, it's going to cause some morphogenic changes, okay, in the developing process of that spine. So that's why it's important for women during pregnancy to get their body properly taken care of.
Okay, so let me try to summarize here, and we'll take a little break.
Right.
If the woman during pregnancy takes care of her health nutritionally
and physically,
keeping it aligned,
yes, sir,
keeping the muscles toned,
right,
and the baby is born properly without the twisting or the jerking or all those kind of things,
right,
which a lot of that happens in hospitals.
Oh yeah, a high percentage of them get dropped.
And dropped, yeah. Okay. Then the chances of the baby's health being good are much better.
Much better.
And in the Bible, they talk about wrapping people in swaddling clothes. My understanding is that the custom of the Middle East folks was to take the baby, pull it out straight, and wrap it up. Hold it straight.
Yeah, yeah. You know,
that's what swaddling means.
That's what swaddling means. You know, the baby has just spent, you know, if everything's gone well, 9 months, okay, in the fetal position.
Right, right.
Okay, and you know, when you're coming out of the womb, you know, and you're exposed to gravitational forces and things along those lines, okay, if you don't properly handle that baby, okay, and that's why C-sections are so horrible, okay, because when they're doing C-sections, okay, I mean they're grabbing the first part they can get a hold of,
pull the baby out,
and pulling the baby out, okay, and so I mean you're just dealing with, you know, early childhood distortions, okay. If you stretch that baby out, not too extensively, but if you stretch that baby out and wrap it up and give it some time to maintain that new proper position, okay, you're going to stop a whole lot of childhood development problems, okay, that are continuing to occur because of the distortion. Volkmann-Wolff law, laws in physical medicine, says that tissues grow according to the stress that's placed upon it.
Well, a bodybuilder that builds his muscles also builds bigger bones.
Also builds bigger bones.
Slower,
but if you have a shift in weight bearing, if you are carrying more weight on one side of your body compared to the other side of the body because of a distortion or a trauma or something along those lines, well then those bones will actually begin to model themselves and you'll end up with wedged vertebra or vertebrae that are thinner on one side compared to the other side. Okay?
And then it can become real permanent.
And then it becomes a permanent process. Okay.
Oh, great. Let's take a break and we'll come back and talk about vaccinations, how they tie in.
Okay.
Thank you.
The top 4 leading causes of death in the United States are all self-induced problems as a general rule. When you look at the top 4 leading causes of death, the first is heart disease. And there's a lot to be done in our lifestyles and the way we live and care for ourselves that's going to influence heart disease. The second leading cause of death in the United States is cancer. And certainly there are, you know, hundreds of things we expose ourselves and do to ourselves on a day in and day out basis that we know causes the formation of cancer. There's so much that we could do to prevent so many of the cancers we have to deal with. The third leading cause of death is lung disease. Okay, well, you don't have to go far to find man's involvement with that. I mean,
Right.
you know, you talked about cigarettes are the smoking, are the ones that smoke, and the people who smoke are the suckers, and
Right.
that's really the way it is. You know, we're just putting toxic, nauseous substances into our body, and we're gonna pay the price for it. And then the fourth leading cause of death, and this is one that usually surprises people, the fourth leading cause of death in the United States today is correctly prescribed drugs. Okay,
Wow.
the correctly prescribed drug. This is from the April 15th issue of the Journal of the American Medical Association, April 15th, 1998. So this is a new study. And depending on the year, somewhere between 100 to 200,000 people die every year from prescription drugs. Over the last 10 years, the average has been 100,000 people. And these are from the correctly prescribed drugs. Leads me to a couple of questions. First off, what's your definition of correct?
Sure.
Okay, I mean, we're talking about, a patient presenting themselves with a symptom, the doctor prescribing a drug that is normally prescribed for that symptom,
Okay.
the prescribing it in the right dosage, and then the patient taking it in the proper manner, and it results in death. In 1997, there was 106,000 deaths. In 1996, there were 198,000 deaths from correctly prescribed drugs. Every year, it puts over 2 million people in the hospital with serious illnesses. Okay, so and those numbers do not include the incorrectly prescribed or the incorrectly taken, and it does not include drug interactions.
Wow.
Okay, so so the fourth leading cause of death is simply the result of man trying to change his symptoms. Trying to alter the way he feels as opposed to taking care of what's not working right.
Unplug the idiot light.
They're unplugging the idiot light.
Yep.
Meanwhile, they're driving another mile down the road and the car's throwing a rod and the engine blows up. Along the lines of the prescription drugs issues, and as far as what we do to deteriorate our health, and that brings up the issues of vaccinations.
Oh, tragic.
It is a fallacy of science. We have been duped into the immunization vaccination process.
Right.
We give our infants their first injection when they're 1 day old, and we're injecting them for hepatitis. Now, hepatitis is a serious health problem.
Mm-hmm.
It is predominantly found in intravenous drug users
Right.
and prostitutes.
Right.
Okay, that's some of that result of sin.
Willful sin.
Willful sin
Sure.
illness situation.
You're doing it to yourself.
You're doing it to yourself. Unfortunately, the pharmaceutical companies have spent literally millions of dollars developing a vaccine for hepatitis. It's not very effective. As a matter of fact, the hepatitis vaccine is the only vaccine that the incidence of disease actually went up after they came out with the vaccine. So we didn't do anything to influence the incidence except spread it.
Yeah.
We give our children their first immunization against hepatitis when they're 1 day old. The vaccine at best is good for 5 years. Okay, which means before this child is at risk, reasonable risk, okay, i.e. Intravenous drug user or multiple sex partners, okay, they're going to require 3 to 4 of these vaccinations
Before they reach 20.
Before they reach 20. The vaccine contains formaldehyde, which is a known carcinogen. The vaccine contains mercury and aluminum compounds, okay, which are known toxins to the neurological system.
How does the body get rid of that?
It doesn't.
It can't.
It can't. It accumulates in the neurological tissue, okay, and interferes with its function. And as we talked earlier, if you interfere with the function of the nervous system, you are now influencing all the other body systems that we have. The increase of aluminum and mercury in our vaccines has been linked to things such as attention deficit disorders, autism.
We give the kids Ritalin.
We give the kids Ritalin
instead of
stopping the vaccine process. There's also other issues involved when you start talking about attention deficit disorders. That leads us into the nutritional aspects of it.
Yeah.
But Ritalin is just another example of, an allopathic remedy trying to effect an opposite reaction than what the body's demonstrating.
Because the average American that's going to watch this tape or listen to this type of conversation is going to say, "What? Don't vaccinate your kids."
It is one of the last sacred cows in our society. But I mean, I have 3 children. We haven't vaccinated them. And they do attend public school, by the way. That is one of the common lies, that if your children aren't vaccinated, they can't attend public school.
Right.
Okay, we can deal with that issue a little bit later. But even my own mother, I mean, for 8 years, okay, every time we spoke, it was like, I can't believe you're not immunizing those children. What do you're just, you're playing Russian roulette with them.
How's their health?
It's excellent.
How old are they?
I have a 17-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a soon-to-be 10-year-old. And the 10-year-old was at a medical doctor's once, and that was when he was 3 months old, and that was a mistake.
Yeah.
My son had some weakness in his lungs. That was his vulnerable area. And so when he was young, he'd get sick and it'd settle into his lungs. When he was about 3 months old, he got pretty sick, had a pretty good case of bronchitis going, and Mom was getting nervous. I mean, I'm trained in this, and I've been seeing a chiropractor since I was 14 years old, so I've been having philosophical and studies in these issues for a very long time.
Right.
My wife is a little bit greener at this, and I learned a long time ago that you don't get in between mother and child.
Right.
Okay, that's just a bad place to be. That's worse than the rock and the hard place.
Right.
So I told my wife, I said, listen, if you're getting uncomfortable and you want to take the child to a pediatrician to get checked out, that's okay. You're not going to step on my toes. Well, go listen to what they say. And well, of course, they diagnosed him with bronchitis and proceeded to prescribe him amoxil, the pink stuff.
Right.
And so started giving my son amoxil, and about 3 days later, he broke into this fine rash, just a red rash all over his body. Took him back to the medical doctor, and a different doctor walked in and took one look at my child and said, "Oh no, this baby has roseola," and proceeded to write another prescription. So we walked out of the doctor's office, and I turned to my wife and I said, "She's a quack." I love that, because for 15 years now, I've been called a quack. Call me a quack, so it was now my turn. But they went home and looked up drug interactions, and there was a picture of my son. I mean, he just had the red rash, just a classic penicillin rash. Woke up the next morning, and my 3-month-old son was swollen, had welts on top of welts. His little finger was as big around as my thumb. I mean, he's just swollen up like the Michelin Man. Well, we let those toxins work their way out of the body, that's what a drug is. Drug is toxic,
right,
by definition. It's a poisonous substance.
Mm-hmm.
So we let that clear out of his system a little bit, and continued to give the conservative care that we do. He gets chiropractic care. He got chiropractic care when he was 2 hours old. My children get treated once a week, regardless of how they're feeling. If there's nothing distorted, well, then I won't move it. But if there is a distortion there, then we want to catch it as soon as possible and take care of the problem.
Okay.
And what we found happening was, as he got older and older, his weak area was still his lungs. And when he first got sick, he'd be sick for 10 days to 2 weeks. And then he'd get a little bit older, and he'd get sick, catch a cold or flu, and it'd settle into his lungs, but he'd only be sick for 7 to 10 days. And then he'd get a little older, and he'd catch a cold or a flu, and it'd settle in his lungs, but he'd only be sick for 3 to 5 days. And now when he starts struggling, and struggling with a cold or a virus or something along those lines, flu or something, well, it will settle into his lungs, but he throws it off in 24 to 36 hours. My son has not been on another drug since that first time.
So what do you say to a parent? Their kid's 15.
Mm-hmm.
They've already had all the vaccinations, been on drugs 15 years.
Right.
Get sick, go to the doctor, give them a drug.
Give the drug.
How do you fix it now? Have they done permanent damage?
Well, actually, my colleagues and I have spent a lot of time debating that issue. We know that when you inject noxious substance like aluminum and mercury into your system, it's there forever. It takes divine intervention to remove it.
Mm-hmm.
God can do that. It's His universe. He can do whatever He wants. But from the physical realm, it stays in those tissues.
Does this mercury come from teeth filling also?
Yes, and that's why a few years back, I believe it was 1990 or so, the American Dental Association went through a massive recall. And encouraged it was on the news and everything. If you've got mercury fillings from this time period, get into your dentist and have those fillings replaced. So a whole lot of people went in and had the mercury cavity or fillings taken out and replaced with another substance, because what was happening was just a little bit of that mercury was being leached off of those fillings and finding its way into the nervous system and causing toxicity.
Wouldn't they get just in the process of removing it, though, you'd swallow more then than you would in a lifetime, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So you really...
Yeah. It's really not
not a good option.
Not a good option.
Don't get it in the first place.
Right. You know, it's funny. I know just a couple weeks ago in Kansas City, there was a medical clinic that closed down because they somehow got a mercury spill in their office. Okay, and I don't know, I imagine a sphygmomanometer or something like that busted, okay, and those things are filled with mercury.
Right.
Okay, and you know, when you make a spill like that, some of the molecules start evaporating into the environment. So they had mercury compounds in their environment. So they closed the entire clinic down for 3 days. Okay, while they got in there and ripped up the carpets and filtered the air and, you know, cleaned up everything. And they concentrated on opening the second floor of the office. Okay, and they got the second floor open first. And the reason they did that was so they could start giving the immunizations, okay, on schedule.
So start putting it straight into the bloodstream.
Right, exactly. We don't want you to breathe any of this mercury.
But we'll shoot it in
But
your
we're going to inject it into your blood system, okay, in the name of prevention.
Okay, from vaccinations, how many kids die from these things?
Well, we experience somewhere between 2 to 10 deaths every year from vaccinations. Immediate deaths, catastrophic in nature.
Okay.
People get the shot, children die, and there's no debate about it. It's obvious.
The vaccine did this.
That's why we have what's called the National Childhood Injury Act. Okay, not everybody's aware of that. Our federal government has a slush fund of money set aside, okay, to pay off the parents of the children who were seriously damaged or killed from the vaccination program.
You have a phone number for that?
Not for them directly, but we do have another phone number for the National Vaccine Information Center.
Okay.
Okay, which is a good place to start if you suspect that your child has been injured. It's real hard to prove that.
Sure.
Okay, doctors stick together real tight.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, the pharmaceutical companies, you know, they're the ones that lobbied for this bill. You know, pharmaceutical executives have said things, for example, with our hepatitis vaccine. The only reason we vaccinate our children for hepatitis is because children are accessible. Children cost less money to vaccinate, okay, and the high-risk groups aren't accessible. Okay, the pharmaceutical execs during the debate as to whether or not they should start immunizing children, their response was the last thing we need is an orphan vaccine. Okay, they've just spent literally millions of dollars on it, and they're going to inject it into somebody.
Could there be another factor that young mothers with young children are less knowledgeable and easily deceived?
We have been taught that the doctor is all-knowing when it comes to health. Okay, and we have been programmed to put blind faith in that doctor. As a matter of fact, I've always encouraged my patients to ask the magic question, why? When you go see any doctor, and
he says, take this drug.
He says, take this drug. Your first question should be, why? What is this drug going to do? What's the benefits of it? What's the side effects of it?
Right.
Do I have an alternative? And many times as patients have gone down that road, the doctor will simply look at them and say, take it because I said so. It's too complicated. You wouldn't understand. Mm-hmm. They've been put up on this pedestal of all-knowing health.
Right.
Okay, and we've been taught not to question them. And that's blind faith. And blind faith is dangerous.
I'm not anti-medical by any means. But
no, there is a time and a place for medical intervention.
Oh man, yes, and I've been many times to the doctor. But I think if you look at the results, the Hunza tribe in India, or Pakistan, Nepal, wherever they are, mm-hmm. has an average life expectancy of over 90.
Right. It used to be higher.
It used to be 150 or 60 when they were first discovered.
Exactly. When the tribe was first identified, it was up around 160.
Yeah.
And it was an amazing culture. I mean, primitive by all Western standards, but yet these people were living much longer than we ever were. And of course, the medical teams went in there and did all these evaluations and tried to figure out what was going on, and things like that. And these people were basically pictures of health.
Yep.
Okay? The only thing that they found that concerned them was that their stools tended to be a little loose, that they were prone to diarrhea.
Right.
Okay, so in our wisdom, we decided to start giving them drugs.
To help this problem.
To help, okay, this elimination problem. And as a result of our drugs, we knocked 6 decades off of their life expectancy.
And now they live to be 90.
And now they live to be 90.
Still pretty good.
Which is still real good, okay? And actually, I understand that it's actually on its way back up. You see, because now we're a couple generations out of those drug uses. Okay, and it's starting to the population damage that we did is starting to right itself.
And then the average age in America is someplace around 70 to 75.
Yes.
Average age of medical doctors is 58.
Yes. Yeah. You know, and recently there's been a big push about, you know, the life expectancy coming up. Okay, that we're living longer now. Okay,
right.
But I always, you know, stress that is not a reflection of our health. I mean, we're
looking at the nursing homes.
We are sicker than we've ever been.
Yeah.
I mean, we've spent literally millions of dollars in asthma research. Okay, but yet you can drive down some highways and you see a big billboard out there saying asthma's on the rise. You know, we need more research dollar because we're losing this fight against asthma.
Right.
You know, asthma is the #1 cause for parents taking pediatrics to the emergency room now. It's not trauma. More children are taken to the emergency room for asthma attacks than there are for traumas.
How many asthma patients would you guess could be fixed, if that's a proper word, cured with chiropractic?
A high percentage of them. Asthma is one of my favorite symptoms.
Right, yeah, I knew that.
Okay, when I have especially a child coming in who's been diagnosed with what's usually referred to as neurogenic asthma. Okay, the child seems to be fine, but if they start running or they get excited or they get into a stressful environment or a polluted air environment, well then the bronchial tubes fail to dilate, okay, and the child develops asthmatic symptoms. Okay, well, bronchial tubes are lined with smooth muscle, and we've known as early as 1922 that all smooth muscle is controlled by the nervous system. Every structure, every function is controlled by the nervous system. The nerves that provide the sympathetic supply to the bronchial tubes come out of the spine in the upper portion of the back, okay, above the shoulder blades, below the neck. Okay, that is the sympathetic supply to the bronchial tubes, and the jobs of those nerves are to cause the bronchial tubes to dilate, okay, under the appropriate conditions. Okay, well, if you have a distortion, okay, in the upper portion of the spine where the neck and the upper back come together, okay, then that nerve is not able to properly function. Okay, the information is not getting from the part to the brain or from the brain out to the part, and there's a failure of those bronchial tubes to dilate. So in man's wisdom, okay, we've come up with those inhalers, you know, the little poppers, the albuterols, the phenols, the Ventolin.
Make it dilate.
Right, we can chemically, artificially cause those bronchial tubes to dilate. A couple of problems with that. One, there's certainly the use it or lose it principle. Okay, if you put your arm in a cast and don't use those muscles for an extended period of time, well then the muscles waste away and atrophy.
Sure.
Okay, if you have neurological irritation and that nerve is not firing properly, okay, and all you ever do is artificially cause those bronchial tubes to dilate, well then pretty soon your body loses the ability to dilate them on their own.
So you're stuck on that.
And so you're stuck on that.
Have you ever seen any people get off of it though?
Oh yes, I have. And the longer they are on it, the harder it is to get off.
Right.
Okay. I mentioned in our earlier session that our body has a constant turnover of cellular tissue. Okay. Every 10 minutes or so, we make 50,000 new cells.
Right.
Okay. If we remove the distortion, take the pressure back off that nerve, and that nerve is allowed to heal, once that nerve heals, then the tissues on the end of that nerve can also begin to heal. Okay. But you got to remove that neurological irritation for that process to take place.
So if child comes in, mother brings her child in and says, my kid has asthma.
Mm-hmm.
You adjust his back, line up his spine.
Yes.
If he's been out for 12 years, it's going to take multiple adjustments.
Right. What we know is that when a distortion occurs, it doesn't matter if it's in your spine or any part of your body, but if there is a distortion of a joint, and that distortion stays that way for 5 to 7 days, it lays down a layer of scar tissue. Every 5 to 7 days after that, another layer of scar tissue is laid down. And it forms like an onion skin appearance. One layer of scar tissue on top of another on top of another. Every time a new layer is laid down, the old layer becomes permanent. Okay? Scar tissue is non-functional. Okay? So you basically lock in your distortions. Now we can still adjust them and correct them and put mobility into the joint, but the results of those treatments are always slower and always less than 100%.
So the longer you wait,
the more problems you have with the correction.
So that's fixable.
Exactly. Another thing about the allopathic approach to asthma, and this is some studies that have come out of the New England Journal of Medicine, the Journal of the American Medical Association, the British Medical Journal, the Lancet. These are well-established, good scientific journals. And these are studies that date from 92 up through the 1998 issues. What we know is that when you do things such as, well, the whole broad classification is called the beta antagonist drugs, okay? The poppers, the albuterols, the venolins, the phenolin, and those sorts of things, the little inhalers.
Right.
If you use those inhalers, you increase your likelihood of death from asthma, and you weaken the bronchial protective mechanism, and it causes your asthma to get worse.
So, counterproductive.
It's counterproductive. But that's the only treatment they have. Once again, it's a case of pulling the plug to the red light. You see,
Well,
when they went in with asthma, all they did was they looked and they said, oh, this child is not breathing good.
Let's fix it.
So let's fix the breathing. Okay, and so they came up with a drug that causes the breathing to change, but it still has a problem that caused it in the first place.
Well, if you forget to take your emergency brake off on your car, you have to give it more gas to go.
Right?
If it'll go.
If it will go.
Or bigger engine.
Right.
The solution, of course, is to take the brake off.
Right.
If you don't do that, there are other ways to make the car go fast, but it's going to create multiple other problems.
Multiple other problems, and it's going to shorten the life expectancy of that automobile.
Of the brakes and the engine.
The brakes and the engine.
Right.
The whole vehicle, is going to be compromised. And when we attack our signs and our symptoms
with the drug,
that's simply designed to cover over the sign or the symptom.
Yep.
Okay, then all you're doing is allowing the body to continue to work at a less efficient state. Okay, and the laws of this universe, the laws of thermodynamics, start kicking in.
So, vaccines are basically poisonous, and of course the obvious reaction you're going to get is, well, you have to, or else what about these diseases?
What about all these diseases? Now, they've played some games with us.
With the numbers.
With the numbers.
Oh yeah, I knew that.
Yeah. Where do we start? Let's start with the granddaddy. That's the polio vaccine.
Right.
Okay.
Salk.
Yeah, the Salk vaccine. There were a couple of vaccines before Salk that caused catastrophic events.
Right.
Okay. People dying left and right. People developing paralytic polio. People developing meningitis. Okay, from the early vaccines. By the time Salk's vaccine came out, the incidence of polio had declined 75%.
What was causing the polio before that, you think?
Well, polio is spread through fecal matter. Okay, that's how it's fecal to oral. Okay, and so the abundance of polio was predominantly a sanitation issue. Okay, when we learned to flush our toilets, okay, remove our waste from our living spaces, okay, a lot of these infectious diseases started an immediate rapid decline.